Hello everyone and welcome back to the Daniel Lee's podcast. And today we are going to be carrying on the trend of our last podcast, and that is investment. But we're going to be talking about different assets this time round. And the feedback that I got last time was phenomenal. I had like over 600 listens on Christmas Day and Boxing Day alone. When everyone's meant to be chilling out with their family, they're actually just headphones in, let's learn about investments. And like I said, this week we're going to change up the investment strategy slightly, but I'm joined by Real Estate Royalty today. Today I'm joined by the Associate Director for Espace Real Estate here in the UAE. These guys are one of the biggest agencies in the Middle East, and today we're going to be talking about Danny's journey through UK to Dubai and then into his real estate journey as well, and then talk about how he did 195 million dirhams worth in transactions last year alone. So everyone, again, thank you very much. If you're new, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back to the Daniel Lee's podcast. Today we're talking investments, so get your pen and paper and let's start making some notes. Everyone, welcome Daniel Abraham.
Hi guys.
How we doing? You good?
Good, thank you.
We finally did it. Yeah.
It's been about 2 months?
Busy doing deals, mate. Busy doing deals, yeah.
It was busy, and then COVID getting in the way. And
how's things been? Like, how's the start of the year?
Amazing. I think, to be honest, start of the year, first 10 days, you've had Christmas off. I unfortunately had COVID, so it was a bit of a saddened Christmas. But I think we came back in, everyone in the office being a little bit worried, as every year most probably, just sitting on the fence a little bit, unsure what was going to happen. You'll always find, just purely because people have travelled, kids are back in school, the first sort of 5-6 days back into the working life is always a little bit quiet. Yeah. But first couple of days and then suddenly boom, it's gone straight back into most probably even stronger than the back end of last year. Yeah. John, our MD, just put out a stat today that January 2021 was our best January in 12 years of trading, and we've started this year at 53% higher revenue than 2021. So that will give 53%. Wow. And we aren't the only agency pulling these numbers. We see it on LinkedIn and everything. Dubai is back. It's booming. There's a lot of new money coming in. I think I heard or read a stat that there was 2,000 new millionaires that had entered Dubai for 2021. So we are seeing a lot of new money come into real estate. Finally, yes. And obviously one of those 2000s was one of the lads that works in your office, right? Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I don't know if he was before, but suddenly, there's, I think for brokers, agents, for the last 5-6 years, we always graft, it's not an easy job. It's long hours, your phone is non-stop, weekends, you're on call pretty much 24/7. I've woken up to missed calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. Someone's ringing from Europe or America. They've seen a property finder listing or whatever, and they're trying to get hold of you. So we are non-stop. So for me, for the last, really since 2015 all the way through to, even 14 through to the back end of 2019, it was really, really challenging times here. Yeah. So brokers have been after this market for a long time.
Were these days better than the glory days? Like when I first moved here in 2014, they had that huge uplift in property sales in like the 2007-8 period. Then the crash happened, and then it came back a little bit as I came here. Is the times today better than they've ever been?
I think for me to answer that honestly would be difficult, because I didn't really enter the market until the back end of 2015. So I've only really worked in a downward market until we really started to see positive signs. Would have been in really from about June 2020 we started to see that initial increase, really from people realising how important a home was when COVID hit. We were relatively lucky in the Dubai or UAE You know, UK had huge lockdown, Europe, India, you know, we had 6 weeks, and 3 weeks was, you know, we were getting the shopping permits to go out every 3 days. That was our tough 6 weeks, and then really we've been pretty steady from there. But you found a lot of people that were living in apartments, you know, or someone that was in maybe a smaller house that suddenly was working from home and the kids were being homeschooled. They needed space. They were like, we need to get out, we need to buy. And I remember looking at some of the prices, why none of us were buying them, because we were nervous, right? We just discussed there about, you know, you potentially buying something yourself.
And now it's $1 million dirhams more.
You know, and that's happened everywhere. But it was anyone that did make that move in June, it was uncertain. You know, no one knew. We couldn't predict what would happen. But we knew that the prices were very attractive. They were very low. They
were wild, weren't they? That's literally what they were. They were wild.
Oh, just like gutted. You know, we didn't pick them up back then. But maybe we didn't have the money back then to do it anyway. But I think, you know, for me, from that journey of what has happened to where we are now, it's been, you know, crazy change. And that's hats off to UAE. You know, how we've done it. I genuinely do think we are the best place and have been the best place in the last 18 months to live. You know, I had a good friend of mine that was over at Christmas, and he was over for 2 weeks. He'd been here multiple times on holiday, but because it was Christmas and we were off, he started to get involved a little bit more in the family side, doing the barbecues. You know, we're holding outside cinema events with the kids, popcorn and the big screen TVs and everything. And he was like, is this generally how you guys have been living? And we're like, yeah, it hasn't really changed. And then generally 5th of January he gives me a call and he's like, we're seriously thinking of moving over. So he's already applied for schools and he's coming out in the February half term, because he's like, you guys are living life. You know, he's like, for me, I'm doing 2 dog walks a day. I hardly see our friends. Most of them are scattered now. You know, the older guys, your friends, they've moved out for jobs. And he said that the lifestyle's just not as good. And I think that is why Dubai real estate is really on a high, because people really want to be living here. And it's the first time really since 2021, and I've been here 8 years, that I've actually called Dubai home. I was always, you know, send money back, do I buy something in the UK? And a lot of friends, you know, family are brought out here now. You know, that was one of the reasons last year was, you know, very successful, because, you know, good friends of mine were wanting to buy. They were, you know, now makes sense. Rents were going up so much, interest rates were the lowest they'd ever been. Why don't we buy? You know, and unless you're like your last podcast with the crypto guy and really know where to put your money, if you don't want to get into that side, it was like, right, we're gonna make this our family home, and we're gonna be here for, you know, another 10 years.
I do see the future of the UAE being so strong. You know, all the regulations that are coming in now with the corporation tax and stuff, whilst people see that as a bad thing, and I'll be honest, like, my immediate reaction was like, oh my god. I thought, what are they doing? But then at the same time, you know, if you look at some of the initiatives that they've put in place before tax, and like what they've got now, who knows what they're going to start bringing in when all this extra money comes flowing into stuff that they can spend into the country. So exciting times. But before we delve deep into the podcast, I really want to know, can anyone be a good property broker?
In short, no. Like, there is a skill set, 100%. Obviously, hard work is required. You know, you will pull results, but you do have to have a skill set. You know, you've got to be very trustworthy, you've got to be reliable, you know, you've got to be knowledgeable. You know, you have to understand the market and want to understand it. You know, you've also got to love the job. You know, it's as I said at the beginning, it is a long, hard slog. You know, my wife winds me up. She's like, oh, you sell houses, like, it's easy. I mean, it's not, it's tough, you know. And then not just that, you're dealing with people, and people are different every single day. We're dealing with, if it was literally just, you're going to buy that and place it there, yes, it would be easy.
You'd all be millionaires, billionaires by now.
Yeah, but also UAE is very different to like the UK on how real estate is done. We are dealing with so many different nationalities. I remember one of my first deals, and remembering, is this what we have to deal with? I had a cash seller with a finance HSBC buyer, and the seller was an Iranian national, and HSBC at that moment in time would not allow the buyer to buy that property because of sanctions on the country. And I'm like, I'm just new, fresh into Dubai. I'm like, I've got an offer. He wants to take it. They're pre-approved, but I physically can't sell it unless they went with another bank. So there's those sort of challenges that you learn. You've got to learn on Dubai real estate and, what the complications can be. I think, if it was easy, everyone would be earning a fortune. It isn't. It's tough. You've got to pull things together. You've got to have that, ability to have a relationship with someone. A lot of the way I would do my client base, because actually my first 6 months here was actually really difficult. I nearly ended it, because I was finding it so hard to find clients. But now the job is very different to what day one would have been, or the first 6 months, because it's repeat business, referrals, friends, clients you sold for 5 years ago are now wanting to upsize, so they're calling you. So people are coming to you because of a name, and that they trust you, and that you can do a good service. So yeah, of course, look, some people we think, would they be good, come in and they absolutely smash it, and then other people you think would be good don't. So it's...
But do you think that's down to like the rejection at times? Because obviously there's a lot of rejection in all sales here, but obviously with property, like you say, you've got 1,000,001 people selling. Like I sold property back in the UK, and you'll know just as well as I do, once you get that property, you sign the client up to being the sole person to sell that property. Here it's like any Tom, Dick or Harry could literally sell your house for you.
You can. There is, I would, now a lot of the ways I will try and do it is by, an exclusive agreement. So we do have that part here, but there's a lot, I try and teach my guys, I could ring someone up and convince them to sell on the phone. If they live abroad, fine, it's very difficult to meet them, at least have a Zoom call, create a relationship with someone rather than just being on a phone. But if they live here, 100%, go and meet them, go and pitch it, get it exclusive. If you're just going to take on a listing from a phone, how hard are you actually going to work on trying to sell it? If he actually lives in the country, go and meet him, go and see the house. So you're right, it's different people will put different amounts of work ethic into real estate. I'm sure there's people that could be phenomenal, but they're only maybe using 20% of their potential. That's then our job here, as the directors and leaders, to pull that out of them and give them tips and how to do it, how to become the best agent. What's difficult with Dubai real estate is we don't earn a salary. Brokers come in, it's purely you're on your own. So the first 6 months is challenging for anyone, and you've also got to risk some of your own cash savings to give it a go, because if it doesn't work out, you've lost 6 months, right? So look, we always look for certain things in candidates, and even sometimes we think people will be good. As I said, sometimes it doesn't work out, or maybe they just didn't try long enough. They maybe got to that 4 or 5 months and was like, nothing's happening for me. Even if you did a deal right in your first 6 weeks, it still takes like 2 or 3 months for that money to, for the transaction to complete and then be paid on it. So, the first year is difficult, but then this is a career. I'd say to anyone that's going to get into real estate, I know we're talking about investments, but if anyone's listening into this thinking, I'm interested in real estate, you have to look at it as a career. You can't go to, I'm going to go into Dubai for a year or two and try and smash it and get out. If you get super lucky, of course, you get a big client, or you're already coming in knowing you've got a big client.
Few and far between though, isn't it?
It is. So, I think for me, look at it as a career, understand and know whether or not you think you'd enjoy the structure, you know, and if anyone wants to find out more, you know, get in touch, we'll speak about it. But in essence, you do have to really enjoy the job, and be able and willing to graft. You know, even with this new working week, right? No one knows what day. Like, Friday was always off for agents. You know, 90% of the time you'd have your day with the family. You'd do some viewings, but normally Friday was off. Now we don't know. Like, some people want to view on Saturday, some people want to view on Sunday. So we're like, oh my God, are we doing 7 days a week?
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it can be very rewarding. So, you know, you get out of it what you put in.
Yeah. So what spurred the move to the UAE? So before we get into the whole investment, I want to dig into the brains of Danny himself and, you know, the reasons for why you actually moved to the UAE.
So, funny enough, I'd always wanted to do it. I think I first visited Dubai with my dad and my
2002,
brother.
I saw that, from my research.
Good man. And we stayed at the Hilton on the JBR, which I think at the time...
Did JBR really exist then, or was it
a little bit, yeah. So I remember when I was driving in, that the Hard Rock building was here, if you remember that. You had, I think the Royal Meridian was there, the Sheraton was definitely there, obviously the Hilton. But I remember looking at the back side of the Hilton, which would now look onto the JBR, and you saw the full marina. And you used to see people coming from the sea on the marina or on the jet skis, and you could see it all. So there was nothing really. The only things that were being built were the buildings behind the original 6, you know, and that was it. And I think we came maybe 2 or 3 times in the space of 2 years. Then I didn't come back for a period of time, just with work, and you know, I was young, I was coming with the family, and then started to come back out, was visiting quite a lot, really enjoyed it. I was gonna just try and make the plunge in 2007. I would have most probably been around 24 or something at the time, 23, 24, and then the recession hit in the UK. And I never forget actually watching a Piers Morgan show on Dubai, you know, with the yachts, and it had the Palm, and it had brokers on the Palm, and I remember it was like I don't know who it was, but it was a lady, like housewife or whatever, got into real estate, suddenly was selling the signature villas, garden homes, and was most probably only more than her husband. And I was like, wow. And I never forget there was a bit with Piers Morgan on a boat, sort of saying that Dubai was going to be unscathed, it was going to miss the recession, it was just booming. And then obviously Dubai got hit really hard, and I left it, you know, from that point. And then again, I then came out in 2012, and with my dad, and we were at the Royal Meridian, the swim up pool bar, and my dad's good friend's brother lived out here and run Eclipse staging services. He was looking for a new business development manager, and was like, you know, after a couple of drinks, was like, why don't you come over? I'm looking for a new guy. You're good at sales. Let's give it a go. And then when I looked at the salary on paper, because that was a salary plus commission job, I was like, wow, it's more than what I'm earning in the UK. Obviously not taking into account Dubai is expensive, right? Obviously, in the tax side of things, it was like, oh, this is very tempting. So I thought, you know what, let's take a risk. I'd always wanted to do it. I would have loved to have gone straight into real estate, but I was very skeptical of it because didn't know anything really about it. You know, I thought, go out, do this, it's a salaried job, and learn it while you're out there.
Yeah.
And then funny enough, I met Gil and John on a golf trip. The first time I'd met both of them, who are now the sales director and managing director of Aspas. Got along like a house on fire. Gil became one of my best mates. John, obviously a good friend as well. And I think I most probably had 2 Christmas parties with Aspas before I actually joined them. And then things were going well with Eclipse, but I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't loving it. It wasn't a career for me. It was like a 1.5, 2 year stopgap. And I, in essence, earned enough money to save enough to then give real estate a go, and so glad I did. Especially, look, feel sorry for anyone that's been in events over the last 2 years. I mean, horrendous with everything going on a whole, right? So
is that business still going?
Still going. It got brought out. Unfortunately, God rest his soul, Mark actually passed away after building up an empire. You know, a huge company. But they're still going. I think they got brought out by a larger company. Most probably the right time, because you know COVID would have really affected that market. So yeah, as I said, started back end of 2015. So coming in like 6 years now with a SPAS, and grew up the ranks. Client manager, senior client manager. Then we have like a silver, gold, and platinum agent. You have to bill a certain amount of money, be there for a certain amount of time to hit those. And then in June 2020, we changed the dynamics in a SPAS, and me and Matthew Montgomery became associate directors. Gil bumped up to sales director, and John took managing director. Yeah. And you know, not saying we're the oracles and changed everything that way. The market's been, you know, the wind's been in the right direction, but the results have been really good. SPAS has grown massively. I think at COVID time, like June, we had about 70 people. We're now up to about 140. So,
I mean, you're being modest, but obviously a SPAS is up there with, you know, the biggest, right? I mean, there's only other real estate company I can think of that I hear about as frequently as I hear about you guys.
Yeah.
So, what does it take to get to that sort of status? Because the wind's blown in the right direction, but there's not that many companies that have got the amount of agents you've got in there doing it as well, and like you say, some top performers. So what's it taking to remain at the top of the game of the agency like kind of status? Because you guys, you're always getting the awards and stuff at the ceremonies, and so you're obviously doing something right.
I think, you know, as I said, we changed the dynamics in the office and how it was structured back in June. I think John saw a vision in, you know, us 4 guys wanting to push the company forward and grow it, you know, and we were all, I guess, eager. You know, we're young guys, hungry, most probably in our prime in terms of our age and what we want to do. You know, I don't think we'd be able to be doing this like as hungry at like 50. So it was kind of like, right, these are the young, fresh, hungry guys that want to go out and grow the business. Pete and Amin, who are the owners, were like, 100%, these are the guys. Like Gil's been here nearly 10 years, Matthew's been 7, and I think John's 10 years as well. So, you know, the pillars, the foundations of the company, we wanted to move it forward and grow it together. So, look, as I said, the market, fantastic, but we all have a target, what we want to do, what we want to achieve. We want to open up other offices. We want to grow in other areas, you know, take over communities. So we all had the same vision. We obviously grew and hired other people, you know, the right people to be able to help assist us. You know, we had Anna, who came in as HR director, you know, amazing job recruiting on average most probably 7 or 8 people per month. Obviously the retention rate is difficult in real estate. If you've got young people that come in and they don't have the money, you know, unfortunately sometimes they go. But you know, the work ethic that everyone's put in to get to that has been huge, and I think we all had the same vision. That's it, and we're all competitive, right? You know, it's on the golf course we all want to win. In here we all want to win, and I think that's one of the reasons I think we've, you know, done so well. Yeah,
I must admit, walking into the office, I was quite intimidated. You know, like you go in and you got like all these young people just like looking like they're, you know, grafters. It was almost reminded me a little bit like Wolf of Wall Street, but just less aggressive, more civilized.
Yeah.
But obviously, I mean, that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask. Is it being no salary?
Yeah.
How can you attract people, like poach people from different businesses, bring in new talent and stuff like that? How do you do it?
I think it's, you know, it's not hard. People could work out, they see what people have done. Like you obviously saw SPAS put their announcement out about myself and what was done last year. That in a way is there to say to people that are good, come and give it a go. I've got a good friend of mine back in the UK who I know smashes it in the UK. Very, very good broker, very presentable. He'd come out and kill it. I always send him little teaser messages. Most probably not the right time for him, and will he ever do it? But I'm so glad I made that move. We do, same as you coming here, Danny. We get one life, right? I've got friends I know, same thing every weekend, doing the same thing, in the same job. It's like, try something different, take a risk. As I mentioned, a friend of mine's coming over. He said, look, if I come over and it's a year and it doesn't work out, what have I lost? I've lost a year.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way people should look at it. Sometimes you've got to take a risk. It's massive benefits for me and my family. And obviously having a family makes a difference, right? You want to provide for them and really push, and you work that little bit harder. But for me, anyone that's coming over, I think anyone that can tell themselves they're hungry and they know they'd do everything they can to try and make it happen and succeed, give it a go, because you're not going to lose much and you could gain everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I completely agree with what you're saying right there, because it's the same for me. I look at that as well with how I do my investment strategies. So I have a diverse portfolio of investments, some risky, some low risk. But whenever I'm going into that investment, I literally say the same thing as what you just said to me there.
Yeah.
What am I going to feel like if I lose this money? What am I going to feel like if I make this money? Yeah, it's a lot easier for me to say, do these things.
Yeah.
But because I've experienced that the best things in life truly live on the outside of your comfort zone, that I've just applied that strategy moving forward with everything. But I do feel for like your friend who does well at home, because I remember the time where I was going to give everything up, and I remember thinking, like, should I even do this? Like, what am I doing? And my mum said the same thing to me. She said, listen, your home's here. If it doesn't work out, you can always come back. And like you, I've been here 8 years now, and the foreseeable future is in the UAE. So tell me about your first deal. How long did it take, and what did it look like?
First deal, funny enough, wasn't in the area that I do. The first deal came from a lead from Gil, who, when I first joined, was my mentor. So we always have a mentor when you start in real estate. Someone that teaches you the contracts, goes out and does a few viewings with you, the valuation process. Even though I'd done it, it's very different because it's, Dubai versus the UK. We have certain types here in a community or certain floor plans, whereas, if you go down a street in UK, Victorian Street, there's extensions in the loft, everything's very different.
Yeah, everything's
you
unique.
might have an end part of the road which is a 70s style build because they've done an extension, so everything's really different.
Sometimes you just walk someone into the property and they're like, oh my god, I love it. And it's so unique to that place. But here it's like, okay, I'll just go next door. It's 100 square foot bigger, but
I'll do the other 07 unit that's in the same building, 300 grand less or whatever. So I think go back to the first question. Was Gil gave me a lead. I took the guy out originally to Jumeirah Village Triangle. He was a pilot, really nice guy, still speak to him, and he didn't really like the feel of the villas. The garden was quite big, and being a pilot, he was like, I don't have the time and effort to look after the garden. He then wanted to do apartment, and I sold him purely because John kept raving about how good of a deal it was in our morning meetings. I sold him a JBR 3-bed. I think it was in Rimal. So completely different to what I'm now doing, but you take anything right for your first deal. And as I said, first 6 months was difficult. And then after that, with the farming of clients, that's a massive thing in real estate, looking after your clients and just making sure you give them a good service, update them. I never really ring anyone and ask for the business. I'm just giving them an update, grabbing a coffee with them, a catch up. And when the time's right, hopefully they go, do you know what, Danny's my guy. He's not been pushy, he's given me the right advice. I've told people, don't buy. If it doesn't make sense, don't buy. I've got people now questioning whether or not the right time for them to sell, but if you're still going to be here 2 to 3 years, like a lot of guys that have been here brought off plan, it's been a great investment for them anyway, and they've obviously done quite well on the other things. I'm like, look, I'm telling people, look, don't turn your old house into an investment, because I can get you better investments.
Yeah.
You know, and why turn your family home that's created you great memories into an investment? I can get you a better ROI if you think outside the box and do this, and you know, we can go into that in a little bit more detail. But it's just given the right advice, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, and I think it's so true, because there's a lot of people that will, you know, there's a lot of people that are in different situations and will think that if they try and sell somebody something, that long run it's like, okay, I'm going to get a bit of money, but in the long run it shoots himself in the foot, because, you know, humans, whether we like to think it or not, like, we go on feelings, right? Yeah. And we're not stupid. We understand when someone's trying to sell you something, and if it doesn't feel right, then it just doesn't feel right, and you shouldn't actually force that. And respect to you for having that honest approach.
It's quite funny. I'll go on. When you first start, you will do anything to try and get a deal, because you're eager, you want to get off to a start.
Yeah.
And you're trying to list something anywhere that you don't have a clue about, which we try not to do. Like, I don't list outside of my area. We can sell anywhere, but I want to be a specialist. You know, if you ask me, Danny, what's the average price per square foot in the Burj Khalifa? I'm not your man. I don't know. I could take you there on a viewing, but if someone wants to know the last 7 transactions of an 07 unit there, I don't know. If people want to know the last 5 beds that have sold in Meadows, I know them all, you know. So you want to have a specialist in the area. But I never forget, I was like in there, I was like, how am I going to get buyers? Like, you're trying to find things. I was going on to Bizzle with people that had their cars for sale with a bracket saying leaving the country, so your key word was leaving the country, and then messaged them saying, sorry, I know you're selling your car, but I just want to see if you're selling a house.
Did you get much from that?
No, not really, but funny enough, what was so surreal is I messaged one guy who, I kid you not, was actually in my office at the time speaking with our owner, Amin. It was one of his friends. And he was like, oh my God, one of your guys has just messaged me to see if I'm selling my house. No, I didn't get anything from it. You know, at the end of the day. Yeah, you've
thinking outside the box.
Yeah, something could come from that, you know. I remember one of the guys in the office went back through old WhatsApps that you'd had from clients and just put out like a little message to everyone, and someone came back, and I think he ended up selling something in Victory Heights for like 7 million. Yeah. Happy days, just from a little message. Yeah. You know, you've got little things, keep it on your toes, you know, and I think that's another thing, you've got to be hungry, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's true, because a lot of the podcasts that I've done previously is all about top performance and how to be the best of your ability, and one guy who's now written a book about kind of the extra 1% and the different mindsets of what you should do, and it is that right there, it's the extra 1%. It's not a dramatic change in what you're doing, but it's something a little bit different that will fish on to something else. But okay, so we're talking about the first deal, and how long have you been real estate now?
Well, sort of literally it's all I've done in the UAE 6 years, just over 6 years.
But you did it for a long time in the
I
UK.
did 11 years in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah, with a few companies, but started like young in leasing in North Finchley. I think I was earning £600 a month. And then I worked for a company called Ashton's, who are based in Hertfordshire, who are phenomenal, really, really good. I was with them for 8 or 9 years. And then obviously moved over. Yeah.
I think one thing that is good about the UK, that I think the reason why that predominantly a lot of the good agencies are Western or British is because of the way they train you back in the UK. They literally stick you on refresher courses all the time, don't they?
Yeah, loads of sales courses that you go on. They'll invest a lot in that, and you would at least 4 a year you'd be on. And you know, it was a great, again, talked about foundation, but it was, I learned a lot from those guys, and you know, the owner of the company was superb. He's still going. The longevity of that company and their staff is crazy. You know, there's people there 20, 25 years still going. You know, so you know, it's important. That's why I want to be here. You know, with a company like Aspas, really looks after its people. It's got a platform for people to grow. You're not just a broker. You can hit different stages, and then if we're growing, I was sat there maybe 2-3 years ago going, how am I going to get in that sort of position where I can manage or I can be a direct? How does that happen? You've got to have a bit of faith, right? There's always going to be doors that open, and if we're growing, there'll be more doors that were open for people. So you just got to stick with it.
Yeah, so let's talk about last year then, because obviously it was a big year for you.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that come in?
But really off the back end of 2020, as I said, going through COVID was horrible.
I was going to say, because let's talk about that period for a second. So
Yeah.
how was that period? Because obviously we went into lockdown. I remember it was like the 7th of March or something like that, and it just like bang, everyone stay at home, don't leave the house.
Yeah.
How long did that period go on for you where it was literally just nothing?
What was difficult was it wasn't just the future business you were trying to do. The business that you'd got that was already in your pipeline, it was frozen because land department was closed, everything was shut down. You're like, what's going to happen with your pipeline? Those 4 months, I think, we'll talk openly, right? I think I earned like 16,000 dirhams. And I'm like, that's not gonna look after a family, no chance. So it was really worrying. Wife was instantly put on unpaid leave. Her parents that were out here, he was a pilot, unfortunately lost his job. I mean, it was really worrying times. It was like we could be going home. So yeah, very, very nerve-wracking. Even afterwards, like even though June started to really ramp up when we sort of came back in the office May, June time, still people that were abroad, how are you transferring your property if you don't have a power of attorney in place? So, kudos to UAE, they did the remote power of attorneys, they did remote transfers, because land department, they're earning money, they take 4% per transaction, they didn't want that. It's a massive thing for Dubai real estate, for Dubai is, the money and the revenue that is created off of it. So, thank God that happened and that we could all start progressing. But yeah, really worrying. And really, I'll never forget June, I did 99 viewings in June, right? That's normally unheard of because June, everyone's out the country normally. They've gone off for the summer. You'd maybe do 25, 30, but it was that we want a house, we've just been stuck in a flat for 6 weeks. We're in a small house, we need to move. And it just kept going, I think it started that September 2020 was the best month we'd ever had. Then it was like November, then it was January, and it just kept going. Every month it was like the best month.
Yeah.
And it was, you went through different stages. It was the needed to move. Then it was the interest rates were lowered by the bank and the deposit levels. So people were like, oh, that's a good time to get on. Then it was FOMO, fear of missing out. All your friends were doing it and you're like, oh my God, they're buying, we better do it. And then it was, my stage I came in was actually Dubai feels like home. It still sort of makes sense where the prices are at, we'll do it. And that's where we're at still most probably, although prices have still gone up since then. People are wanting to call Dubai home again. So, it was very, very worrying, but it just kept going. And, it's not sounding crude in any way, but, make hay while the sun shines. We don't know how long this will last, hopefully it will. There seems to be huge amounts of positivity. You brought up the part about tax at the beginning, initially we were all like, oh, and then you're like, oh, income tax and all that stuff might come in. But ultimately, the vision is to make Dubai, the best place in the world by 2040. They're going to need to do that, reinvest, like put stuff back in. They've already, what they've done in 50 years or especially the last 25 years is incredible. So, I hope it continues. It doesn't feel like it's slowing down.
Yeah.
Of course, there was a lot of work that went into it, but buyers' registrations, the highest we've ever seen. If you speak to mortgage brokers, they're so busy. There could be interest rates going up on the interest, so people are obviously like, look, let's get in now while the interest rates are still attractive. You can fix at the moment maybe for 2.5%, 2.6% for 4 or 5 years. It makes sense. The rents are shooting up. You know, for what mine would rent for now, what I live in, to what I'm paying on my mortgage is easily half. So, and I'm paying monthly rather than 1 or 2 checks. So it makes massive sense to me. I'm in more control of my money. You know, I don't have to fear or worry about being evicted by a landlord because the prices are going up. So it's my home. Yes, I've had to put 20% cash in it, but you know, for me,
that's your investment now, right, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, thankfully the market's still gone up. Even if it goes down, my buffer's there. You know, who cares for if it goes down in the next year? It doesn't bother me. I'm not looking to sell. You know, that people are always so nervous in Dubai because of real estate. But what people forget is it's a home. Yeah, if you're going to live in it and enjoy it, and you're not thinking about selling it in a year's time, what about 10 years' time? You know, if you buy a place for 4 million, let's say, and it's 200,000 a year rent.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not that much, but you know, it could be. You could 4 million, get 200,000. You know, 10 years of that, you're throwing 2 million dirhams down the drain in rent. You know, it's very doubtful you buy it for and it's going to be worth 2, even if you sell it for the same price you bought it for. Yeah, you would have cleared off a chunk of your mortgage. You've created memories in your own house. And you know, we don't have a golden ball or a crystal ball to know what's going to happen, but it just feels right. The market feels in a good place, and there's a lot of confidence. Confidence.
Well, I was reading. I was preparing some statistics, and last year alone, there was 84,772 transactions.
Crazy.
Mental. Equating to over 300 billion dirhams. I mean, it's frightening money. And what I found really fascinating was from 2020 prices last year, it was a 65% increase in transaction and a 71% rise in cost. That's phenomenal.
Crazy.
But it is just like you say, it's a testament to kind of like how this country's ran. And as you mentioned, I mean, we spoke about it just now about me investing in property here as well. Maybe as a home to live in, maybe as an investment, I don't know. But I see this place as more attractive now than actually the UK.
Oh, 100%. I think, look, there's multiple reasons why. I think people worry because what has happened. You know, we've seen 2 big drops in Dubai, with the 2008-9 and then from 2014 obviously down to obviously a slower decline all the way through to sort of mid 2020. So people are worried, but look what they're doing. The golden visas, they're making it so much easier for people to come in and travel. I think you can do 90 days now if you come in and apply for special visas. So that side of things a lot easier for people. The short-term rental market is booming. You go back 2-3 years ago, I can't remember exact time when they allowed short-term rentals, but obviously with COVID that's been a huge part for Dubai because
short-term rentals, we talking about holiday homes or short-term?
Anything, holiday homes, it can be villas, it can be JBR, marina, downtown, whatever. And we never saw that before because obviously the laws were you could only do a full year's contract and you had to be a resident to take that contract up. Now they are allowing short-term rents. So, we've seen a lot of investors come in and do these. They're buying, the blue waters, the beachfront, the downtown, affluent areas where they know that people might trip in for a month. Maybe the family comes with them as well. They can work from home. They do their Zoom team meetings, whatever they need to do. They can still go out because we've been able to go out where other places. So there was a real surge.
There was a huge increase of that. There was loads of people that I was meeting that were just turning around and saying, we're going to come and work in Dubai for 6 months because London have just announced that we're going to go into lockdown again, got to work from home. And they're like, I'm out.
Well, I had friends because of UK, because of time difference, they were getting up at 6-7 o'clock in the morning, playing 18 holes of golf, showered home, set ready to play, to start working UK time at 12 o'clock. and being able to go out and actually do those things. So the prices we've seen on short-term rents is incredible, especially if there's nothing else available. Christmas time, some of the figures that people were pulling in on short-term was eye-watering. So, we've started doing that now. We have association here with short-term rents. It's another division that we've opened up to, because we see it's a huge part within the business, and loads of investors, and there is so much new money coming into Dubai like crazy. 2 guys I've met in the last 4 weeks. One guy had been over for a wedding, and obviously went back, and then literally was like, I'm coming back out. Like, they're here now, renting in Dubai Hills, and want to effectively live here. That's his journey. He's like, it just makes so much sense. And then another guy literally got a lead 2 or 3 days ago, moved over from Belgium, really nice guy, just wants a better life for his family, works for him still for what he does work wise because of where we're positioned in the world. And it just, everyone seems to be doing it. I'm not the only guy in the office that's getting these inquiries.
So obviously we talked about how well the market's doing right now, so you'll obviously be a lot more knowledgeable about this now. Obviously before, in 2007, there was a real surge in prices, and then all of a sudden market crash. That was a global thing, but obviously Dubai's on its own now, where it's completely like dominating everything. It's like, I saw it's one of the safest, the UAE is one of the safest places to live now. I did read some, the Forbes and the Economist. Funnily enough, they don't actually have the UAE as the top places to live, but it is, like, it's the most talked about place. But how long can this keep going for? And what sort of protections are now in place from the government to make sure that there's not going to be some crazy crash if the prices keep, and obviously with the interest rates now rising as well. People remortgaging, are they going to be able to afford their properties? Is there stuff that's in place that's going to stop any crash happening again?
I think that's very, very tricky to say. I think what they're trying to do in terms of a country with the vision, bringing in the corporation tax to be able to keep investing, keep growing. I mean, whether or not it will happen, I haven't looked into it enough, but little things like Ras Al Khaimah bringing in the potential of casinos and gaming.
It's not even potential now. That's a signed done deal.
Signed done deal. So I didn't want to say anything I know, like, we'd seen stuff, but I hadn't seen the full.
But we have to correct you on that though, because it's a gaming centre, not a casino.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So it's I'm sure there's going to be, it's not literally going to be like Las Vegas. So you look at that though, and you're like, it's becoming so westernised. In terms of the region. Everything around us, it's going to become a lot easier. And if they're going to continue to do these things, it's another tick box. It's another reason. Another thing, what I love, the developers, they're allowing you to do so much more than what you were 2-3 years ago. For instance, you go to Emirates Living now, some of the extensions you can do on properties, you'd never be allowed to have done that. Now you can do full-on double-store extensions, extend out the rear. It always used to be that you could only fill in like the balcony space. So it's improving the development. That's strengthening prices, because people are coming in and paying a good premium for
unique
properties, fully upgraded properties. We just saw one in Jumeirah Islands, like, unbelievable deal. From what he bought it for, spent on it. He bought it at a good time, a good price. That the owner's now seen a niche in the market, because Palm's flying, right? Amazing place, loads of people want to be there, it's unique. People are going, all right, do I go and buy an entry-level garden home on the Palm at, let's say, on average 15 million, or do I go somewhere like Jumeirah Islands and buy something of similar size for 7.5 million? And I can then go and spend 2.5 million upgrading it, and I'm all in at 10, rather than that would most probably be 3 to 4 million dirhams on the one on the Palm, and I'm all in at 20. Not a million miles away from where they live, still great views, great size houses, big plots. So, everyone's looking at these niches in the market of where can I get in? Can I flip these properties? And people are always nervous to say, oh, can you flip them? But then something breaks the trend, and it's like, well, yeah, actually you can. Look at the recent data. Here we are. Here's an MOU of something that's sold.
Amazing. So for people listening in going, right, do you know what, I actually want to invest into a property like that where I can expand it, add on to it and stuff. What developers and locations are the best locations right now in terms of what you see from getting the permission to build more? Yeah,
so Emaar have been fantastic in Emirates Living. Obviously, you got Dubai Hills, Arabian Ranches, obviously Palm as well. I mean, Palm, Nakheel, with Jumeirah Islands, they're really we had this one house we were talking about, we were calling it the Miami house. It was lovely, big windows, cut off all the edges, made everything nice, white, flush, contemporary, very, very modern. Something that we hadn't seen before in those communities. So if they continue to relax the rules, I think that's only going to benefit them as the community, and obviously gives buyers the opportunity to make more money, which I think that's what we look for in real estate, right? Is it a sound and safe investment? And the fact that now people are doing it's a relatively new market for these upgrades. It's some people were doing it back in the day, but now when they're extended, the big bifold doors, the high windows, and all of these things that are changing the game in all communities. So for me, most allow it. The big areas, as I said, Emirates Living, Palm, Jumeirah Islands, all of those are places that I would seriously consider investing in.
Nice. When it comes to investing in the property market here, a slight difference, which is actually something that I was talking to a friend about potentially people actually doing in the UK, is rather than paying so much tax because you think that your street's going to get serviced better, actually paying for the service fees and stuff, because you go to any development here and it's immaculate. But obviously sometimes it tends to be quite expensive. So how is that relative to being able to, because you can buy a property in the UK or, for example, anywhere else in the world, and you could you put down, say, for example, 25%, you would end up paying a lower mortgage payment each month. Now here you have to do that, but then you've also got service fees and stuff on top of that. So how can an investment really be profitable when you're actually paying for, even though it's good, the service fees are good because it keeps the place immaculate, secure, but how can that then be profitable for someone that wants to go in as a landlord, let's say?
You still, obviously in the UK, you'll still have council tax that you'll pay, which will cover the similar. It covers your dustbins, the look of the street, all those things. With obviously here, so I'll take my community for instance, Emirates Living. You've got the guys on the gate that are looking after the area, making sure that it's safe and safe environment. All the builders and everything that are coming in and having to get NOCs, it's strict. They want to make sure that it's a very well looked after family community. Then you've got the parks, the pools, you've got the lifeguards at the pools, you've got the dustbin guys, you've got the lakes that need to be looked after. They're going around and doing pest control and making sure that the lakes are looked after and clean. And in essence, it's not actually that expensive. You pay 2 dirhams on the plot size, per square foot on the plot size.
Okay.
So, let's say an average plot size in Springs is 3,500. It's 7,000 dirhams a year paid quarterly. It's not actually a huge
so it's
amount.
Not that astronomical.
So it doesn't actually eat massively into your ROI.
And is that for every development or just?
No. So you do get different. You could go to the high end stuff where there's buildings that have spas in them and concierge and
of course,
all these things where the high wealth individuals want that. They want to know that Volante, for instance, there's a chef there 24/7
Where?
So Volante,
Where's
which is
that?
in Business Bay.
I've never heard of that building.
Yeah, by Business Bay. It's the same guys that own Le Rev.
Okay.
Or the guys that built it. One of the architects there, Andrew, he invited me over once for lunch. Amazing! It's got a spa in it. In essence, someone wealthy, a businessman that's flying in maybe for a meeting, could rock up at 2:00 in the morning and wants something to eat. There's a full-time chef there.
That's luxury living.
Their service charges, I mean, actually, they're not actually that bad for that building, but are obviously going to be more expensive price per square foot than Springs.
Yeah.
But it's different buildings, and obviously you've got to look at that. But you're most probably, these guys that are buying a Volante or a Le Rev aren't looking really to rent it out. It's a holiday home, or
they're not really that bothered.
They
about
don't really
3 dirhams
need
a square foot.
No, yeah, exactly. They've got the money.
Yeah.
I think you have to look at each individual building, what it offers. Some buildings are amazing with the gyms and what they actually physically have in there. And if you're utilising it and going to use it, then fine. So everyone's different, but in essence, it's that they're not that bad. With all the costs that are involved, yes, you have to put a minimum of 20% in as central bank rules, although some banks will allow you to finance the fees. So in the buying process in Dubai, it's 6%, right? 2% agency, 4% land department fee. And some banks will allow you, depending on your profile, to do 80% of the fees. They will finance that as well. So you're getting in roughly 15%. I think it is a good time. It's a lot better than it used to be. I remember going back 3 years ago, you would be mid threes interest rates, and now is a lot lower. You're saving a lot, and the rents are going up.
What
so
are
it's
the
a good
interest
time.
rates now then?
So you'll be paying. Everyone's different on their profile, right? Myself was a little bit more difficult to get a mortgage.
Because you're like self-employed.
Yeah. I would say on average now you'd mostly be around 2.5, 2.6, and you'd be able to fix for about 3 to 5 years. So still good. Very good. I would seriously get in now because US has gone up. We'll follow suit. Everything will start going up in terms of interest
When
rates.
do you reckon that impact will start happening with the interest rates coming to the UAE? Because obviously everything's pegged to the dollar.
Yeah.
So like you say, we naturally follow suit. But when do you reckon we'll start to see those interest rates happening as well?
Most probably the back end of this year, I think, start to see it. It's a competition with the banks. Who's going to be the first one to give that position up? Yeah. Obviously they're all fighting after business. Things are booming. They're in the same thing as us. They want the buyers. They want it to keep going, but they're going to have to. If that's, as you said, we're pegged, we'll have to follow suit. Most probably the latter part of this year. And that's we're speaking with the guys in the mortgage side. We obviously give as much advice as we can, and we know about it, but we're not speaking to the banks. We obviously we have an in-house mortgage team here, which we're speaking to them daily because our clients are with them.
Yeah, and in terms of lenders themselves, obviously what a lot of people don't understand is you've got Islamic banks and I'm not going to say normal banks, but like your standard regulation kind of. Obviously, the Islamic banks go by Sharia law. So, do you always try and steer clients away from that just because of the way Sharia law is?
Well, it depends. Again, depends on their religion.
Yeah.
Some actually would like that. There isn't a massive difference. Like the guys, mortgage team will say, look, obviously on your title deed when you buy the property, the way it's described when you go with an Islamic mortgage is that you're renting it off of the bank. Whereas on a title deed with a mortgage, they'll have a stamp, HSBC, Emirates MED, Standard Chartered, whatever, have a stamp on the title deed mentioning that they are part of it, but the name on the title deed will be myself or whoever the buyer is. So that's really one of the only main differences that you'll see. Would I use them? To be honest, mate, I don't know. I'd have to look at. I think if it was an attractive mortgage rate, and to be honest, I would take advice off of the mortgage broker. I'm not in mortgages to give the full sort of lowdown, I think I would go on our trusted guys in here, and if he's advising me to go with it, I would go with it still.
Yeah. So we've obviously talked a lot about investments and what you can do with your property and some of the best locations to buy, and obviously the benefits behind some of the developments that are there. But let's talk a little bit about some stuff that was actually in the news recently and the whole downside of real estate. But I mean, let's not get it wrong. There's a downside to everything, right?
Yeah.
But you mentioned holiday homes. Literally last week, I think it was, there was, I think, something like 17 million, I think, if I correct me if I'm wrong, was done through a scam in holiday homes. Yeah. I know it's impossible to say how can you fix that, but if you're listening to someone, if someone's listening to this podcast, and they're looking, because the ads go everywhere. I started looking on Property Finder for some properties, Instagram, Facebook, even YouTube are like trying to send me property stuff, and you really don't know. And you see these like lovely pictures of the new EMAR development, and they're like buy cash now, and this and that and the other. But realistically, how can you make sure that if you're looking online that you're actually going for a safe investment?
I think that obviously is down to the individual really doing their due diligence.
But what type of due diligence can they follow?
So if you're looking to, let's say, buy, for instance, what would I do? If I was going to a new area that I didn't know much about, right? I would love to buy a place in Portugal. Would love to. That's the dream. What am I going to do? I'm going to look on their portal, which, they've got a few, but let's say Rightmove, they have a Rightmove there. I'm most probably going to search the area that I want, and I'll look to see how, who's the agent there that's got the most listings, who's got a big presence. There's certain things you can do to see who's active in an area, who's doing the most transactions in the area.
Yeah.
Is there a name? You go on to Property Finder here or Bayou to whatever, you have a verification process, right? So when you could go on to one of the websites now, and it could be a guy that's taken a photo from his mobile phone. It'll be a mix of different houses. It'll be a floor plan of a type 6, a type 2, a type 15, and it's like, that's not even the same house. 1 minute there's a picture of a pool in the garden, and next there isn't. And surely people can tell that is not a legitimate listing, whereas if it's got the verification badge or it's been true checked by Bayou, which means the broker's actually gone into the house, taken a photo, it's gone through the verification process. That should give buyers that are doing the research, a real confidence that one is a legitimate listing and a legitimate company. I always look. I've spoken to clients before. They're like, I've already listed my property. I'm with these guys, and then I look and I'm like, they've got one listing in the whole of Emirates Living, and that's yours. How have you even chosen this agent? Unless it was a family friend and they were, giving you a good deal, or you trusted them. Fair enough, but surely you've got to be looking at that. For most people, property is one of their biggest assets, right? Surely you've got to be choosing the right person to look after that for you. In terms of the holiday short-term side of things, again, yes, it is relatively new. I think you've got to go through the same process. What have they got online? What else have they rented? Who are these companies? If you're worried about them, ask, can I see a copy of your trade license? Anything that you can do to make yourself feel comfortable before parting cash. We now have an integrated system on the Dubai Rest app the Land Department have done, which is the Form A, Form B and Form F are what create the Form A is an agreement between the broker and the seller to list the property. A Form B is between the buyer and the broker. Form A and B come together to create the Form F, which is the legally binding contract. And you can do a side addendum attached to that contract to discuss a little bit more the terms and conditions. I still see brokers using the paper copy, right? The paper copy does not exist. If they went to Land Department with a paper copy, the Land Department will laugh. It does not exist. they have literally edited an old document, like just gone on PDF or saved the blank one, and then just write in a fake contract number. It's fake. It does not exist. I just had to advise a client the other day. I was like, ring Dubai Land Department. They do not exist anymore. Everything has to go through the Dubai Rest app, which actually is very good of Dubai. Sometimes there's teething problems, but
makes it a lot safer.
Well, as soon as I put in a seller's title deed number and their Emirates ID, it gives me all the information about that property. You know, their telephone number, their email, like everything attached to them. You can choose whether or not it's an exclusive listing, non-exclusive, what the price is. Everything is outlined. Now, if there's an issue at that time where you're trying to list the property, sometimes it comes up with invalid title deed information. That means he's obviously changed his title deed, he may have remortgaged, something's happened, we need to ask, he might have another title deed, or his passport's expired, there's a new, everything's linked to your Emirates ID. So it's amazing now how they're doing it, because we can then know that is a legitimate seller, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to create the Form A. So they've made it a real professional way, but still brokers are trying to do it via the paper copy. Now, if anything ever went wrong, you can't. Some trustee offices, maybe, I don't know, might take it still to do the transfer, but if anything ever went wrong, it's null and void. You can't take it to court. It's a fake contract, doesn't exist. Yeah. So, it's people understanding. I think for anyone that is serious about it, do your research. Look to see who is a good agency or specific, who's a good agent in that area. Ask someone. I'm sure if you're coming to Dubai, you know someone that either lives here. Have they had an experience with a broker, that has longevity, has a good record and reputation, and then obviously take it from there. Yeah. Would you, if someone calls you up, you've never met before and you've never heard of the company, you're going to look into it. You're going to want to meet them first before giving them any money.
Depends if he says his name's Danny Abraham. Yeah. Oh, hello, mate. Yeah.
I'll do it. No, it's just make sure you do, especially if you're parting cash. It's a bit different on the short-term rents, because obviously you're coming out, you might stay for a month or whatever. Bit different, but if you're going to buy a property, make sure you've done your research. And that you trust the broker. I think a lot of it is about people buy people. That's the first thing I learned in the job with Ashton's at my old company was, people will buy people, and if they don't like you, they're not going to do business with you. It's as simple as that. If you're honest with them, don't fluff anything. Don't try and make it better than it is. This is it. That's it in plain sight. That's another thing for anyone who's getting real estate. Just do the little things right, and it reward you in the long run.
Perfect. Now, before we go, because you've given me lots of information, and I'm sure the wife and children are going to be screwing that you're not going to make bedtime. But on obviously serious note, and a final topic is off-plan properties.
Yeah.
Do you deal with them a lot?
Our company does. To be honest, I've only ever done two. One was literally, I had a friend that came from the UK that wanted something, and at the time I didn't know much about the development. I just passed it to my off-plan guy to deal with it. It's a relatively smooth process. Again, make sure you do your research on the actual developer, the product, what they're actually selling you. If it's something you've just seen online through an ad, make sure, be a little bit careful, but in essence it's quite a smooth process. They give good payment plans. If you're aware of the developer before and what their sort of previous projects are like, you can most probably trust them a little bit more. They've been, obviously the last 5 years was quite a tough time for anyone that brought off plan. I remember when people had brought Dubai Hills off plan, and then it got handed over. From what they had brought it for to what it was then worth, it was, people were losing 30-40%. Now obviously it's gone right back up, so anyone that was able to rent them and hold on to it's been very rewarding.
But can we clarify, you only lose when you sell, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can buy. So if, let's say for instance,
but realistically, though, what I mean by that is you don't actually lose the money until you sell the property, right?
correct.
If
You can hold it.
hold it,
Rent it. I mean, look, it was nerve-wracking. The last 5-6 years doing it was nerve-wracking. The new ones now, like, they're selling like hotcakes because, again, people want them. You know, they're not releasing projects as much as they were in like 2018, 19. Every week it was like there's a new project, and it was diluting the market. You know, there was so much stock available. Supply and demand, right? You know, if you've got 10 buyers and one house, obviously that house price is going to go up. Flip it, it goes down. So, you know, for me, they had to halt it. Doing that also helped the market. But now they feel confident. You know, you reeled off the stats, and, you know, 75% up in transactions. I guess Dubai and developers and everything are sitting there going, do you know what? It makes sense to start building again, because it's going to be needed. You know, people are wanting to come here. You know, I'd be interested. I haven't looked, but I'd be interested to see how many people moved to Dubai in 2021 versus what it was. Well, 2020 would be difficult because obviously a lot of it was on lockdown, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see those stats.
But it would be interesting to see because it was off the back of a pandemic where people were screaming to get out of their own country. So it would actually be interesting to see if it went up.
Yeah.
Listen, I really appreciate the time that you've taken to give us that kind of like high level. I mean, there's stuff that I didn't even know, like the applications and the stuff with building now, and that helps me in my job.
Yeah.
Because when I get called to a villa renovation, I now know that I can go further than something else. So you've actually, it's been helpful for me, and I hope it's been helpful for everyone else. But for anyone wanting to buy houses with you and look for investments, where can we find you?
Obviously, my email address is just danny@aspas.ee. Obviously, if anyone wants to get in touch, I've got the Instagram page, Real Estate Danny. You know, and obviously contact details, which you can obviously put out.
Yeah, I'll put it in the bio.
Yeah, for me, it's, look, the way I work with clients is I genuinely do want to help them find the right thing. You know, ultimately, I want to make sure buyers feel comfortable with what they're purchasing, and that sellers, if we're selling, get a good service. You know, back in the UK, client is king. You know, you've got to look after them and make sure you go on a service. And a lot of my stuff now, I tend to do, you know, if people are referrals of friends, I know for me, selfishly, that, you know, those guys most probably only want to use me because it's already come from someone they've used. So I'm putting a lot of time and effort into these guys and making sure that they do right. And I would always, the way my own little motto is, I would only sell someone something that I believe in, and is the price, does it feel right to me? You know, if I had your budget currently looking in the area you want, what would I specifically buy? What would I go for, and what makes sense? And I've kind of, since I've been here and doing real estate, I've always gone with that sort of motto, because it comes back to you. You know, if you do something wrong, people, they're not going to refer you to a friend. Real estate is all in Dubai is all about referrals. It's about doing a good service, and those clients will come back to you when they either want to upsize or they want to buy an investment. You know, if I don't feel right, like I've just had a guy, got a great client, lives in Meadows, and he came to me with 5 of his investment portfolio that he wants to sell. So I don't deal with apartments, so I gave him to one of our specialists that's going to manage it. I said, look, I'll dip in every now and then. If you want to speak to me, if you want to get feedback, if you know you need to call me, but I wouldn't be your guy to list that property. And I think that's the right thing to do, because I'm giving him the better person to deal with that product. Straight
away, he's always going to remember you, because he's going to be like, yeah, Danny sorted me out.
Yeah, I don't need to go, I've got 5 listings there, I can try and sell them. Actually, in my time that it would take to go and learn that building and, you know, get them listed, I'll most probably lose out doing what I'm good at in my area.
Yeah.
So again, that's not really talking about investments, that's an agent's perspective. If they're coming into real estate, become like a specialist in your area. Yeah, and yes, it might be difficult in the first sort of 6 months or so, but it will reap rewards for, you know, later years to come in the career.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, mate.
My pleasure. Thank you.
If you're listening to this podcast, make sure you head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating if you loved what we did, and also leave us a comment. I always love reading out the comments on the next shows and hearing what you guys have got to say. We've had some amazing feedback and changed the demographic with the podcast. It was all motivational stuff before, and we're still going to keep that, and we've got some really interesting stories coming up for the first part of this year, but we really want to hit home with the investment strategies to try and help you as much as possible as we can. And we've just sat down with one of the leading experts in the real estate industry in Dubai. So if you think this is going to be beneficial to some of your friends as well, please share it with them, because without you, we wouldn't be able to do this. So again, thank you very much for listening to the Daniel Lees podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, bud.
That was good.